Hey folks, welcome to Code and Concrete, where we share the latest trends and the stories of trailblazers in the built environment. We hope you gain some insight from our wide range of topics, such as real estate development and sustainability, or blockchain, artificial intelligence, and data. Joining us today is Christopher Kemp. Christopher is a seasoned real estate capital markets and project management professional with extensive expertise in real estate development consulting, financial analysis and modeling, mortgage portfolio underwriting, project management, market analysis, and real estate debt structuring. You gave me a grocery list of items to list there, Chris. His in-depth understanding of both the market rate and low-income housing tax credit markets and the operations of community-based organizations further enhances his ability to create impact and sustainable projects. You have a wonderful biography that you've built for yourself, Chris. I'm really excited to have you on the show.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad that we got to reconnect digitally. We were talking before the show, and it's one of the several times that we've got to go back and forth about what's happening in the world and in real estate. Because we initially met up at an event that I was hosting. I think it was almost a year ago to the date, talking about real estate and affordable housing, and we actually got to shake hands there.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, lots changed since we met, and a lot has happened. So yeah, let's get into it, man.
Well, for people who don't know what you've been working on in the past year, maybe this is a good place to start.
Yeah, in the past year, a lot has changed. I've always had my own entity, but I really jumped in it with both feet. And I've been working with smaller investors, urban investors, as a commercial real estate development consultant to help them with their development projects. And primarily, I've targeted those individuals that have predominantly, invested in single family and duplex homes, and they wanted to make the transition to the commercial side of the business. And that's my expertise. So I can help them put together, if they just want a pro forma, or if they want the full, kit and caboodle of getting a GC in place to get financing, to get bank financing, and also, deal structuring, and also, to be able to tap into community-based funds, whether it's through a CDFI or a business improvement district, or, interface with the city, with CDBG funds, or any of those types of things. I can help put that financial salad together for them. And matter of fact, the latest project I did about 2 months ago, helped a guy. He had a significant hard money loan on his property that he purchased from the city as a mixed-use property, 6 commercial units on the floor, 10 residential units in an urban area, the north side of Milwaukee, as a matter of fact. And that hard money loan was killing him. So I went in, helped him restructure it, got him a GC, got the construction budget put together, and then put the pro forma together for him and structured the deal. Went in front of the local business improvement district of the area that he was in, and they granted us $80,000. The city granted us another side grant of about $90,000. And then I was able to get him to a bank and CDFI that participated in the deal, and got him a $1.2 million construction loan with takeout financing. And now he has a $1.3 million asset, and he's very happy.
That's awesome. So you're both developing and consulting people who want to develop. I mean, that's got to be a lot on your plate right now.
Yeah, it's a lot, but it's right in my wheelhouse. So it's fun for me. It's second nature. I can do performances with my eyes closed in my sleep. So but doing those types of deals in urban areas, and being part of a revitalization of an urban corridor, a commercial corridor. And it's really exciting for me, to see that transformation happen.
So you mentioned that you were helping this person get into commercial real estate. I want to know how you got into commercial real estate. Was this something that you studied? Where did you decide along the line that real estate was going to be the industry for you?
My family, started with my grandfather, Howard Benton Kemp. Stood 6'5", strong, strapping dude, super brilliant from Tupelo, Mississippi. And he came, he brought his family up from Mississippi during the Great Migration from the South to Milwaukee. Initially he was going to be an attorney, but life happens and he had to come north, cause Mississippi, you know about Mississippi and what it was like in the late 60s, early 70s. So, came to Milwaukee and, he decided to get into real estate. And he was a brilliant guy. My father would even, talk to me and tell me, he was like, I'd see your grandfather's, correspondence course. He gets straight A's. He's a brilliant guy. So he ended up, opening up his own real estate brokerage, and he did single family development. He developed over, 250 homes, single family homes in the city of Milwaukee. You could see them dotted all over the city. They're these single, ranch style homes, that you would see in these urban areas around A-frames. And it was a time I was, I dropped a friend off at a place and I looked at the house and I was like, that looks like a house that my grandfather would have built. Who is the owner still there? He was like, yeah, my grandfather's the original owner. And so I was like, can I meet him? And so I went in and met this guy and I was like, who built this home for you? He was like, this old fellow from Mississippi named Howard Kemp. I was like, that's my grandfather. I was totally blown away.
Wow.
The original owner was still there. This guy had to have been in his 80s. And I ended up, taking a picture with the guy out in front of the house and sent it to all my aunts and uncles and my dad. And I was like, this is one of Grandpa's houses that he built. I think it's on like 9th and Center. And so he inspired me, to go into real estate. My uncles and aunts were also in the business, as a result. But I wanted to take it to the next level, and go into the commercial side of real estate and get into the capital market side. And so I studied, I got my undergrad in real estate finance, and then ended up getting my master's of business administration in real estate, and urban land economics from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Did I say my undergrad was in finance and investment banking, and got my MBA in real estate. And so from there, I wanted to get a strong fundamental understanding of the business. And so my first career move, I went to Freddie Mac and learned all the fundamentals. A good guy by the name of Adrian Corbiere, who's the senior vice president of multifamily division in McLean, Virginia. He hired me and gave me the opportunity to do a round robin in the entire multifamily division. So I was jumping from section to section: structured finance, asset management, loan production, bond financing, LIHTC. And it just gave me a good foundational understanding of commercial real estate and the business. And I was able to transfer from the DC office to the Chicago region. And I was in loan production because I wanted to do deals. I wanted to see all types of deals and get fundamentally sound, because eventually I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I know if I got that foundation, I would be squared away. So that's kind of what led me into commercial real estate.
So you knew that you wanted to be an entrepreneur already. What was that entrepreneurial spirit inside you?
That it came from my family. They were all entrepreneurs on my father's side of the family. Even my father, who is, he was an anesthesiologist for 25 years. He eventually, after he practiced anesthesia for a while, formed a physician-owned practice. One of the largest HMOs in southeastern Wisconsin. They were bought a couple of years back, but it was the Dean Clinic. He ran the Dean Clinic for 13 years and practiced anesthesia in Madison, Wisconsin. And they had a bunch of physician-owned practices around southeastern Wisconsin. And I told him, I was like, you're an entrepreneur too. You may be practicing medicine in this hospital system, but look at what you've done. It's you guys own it. He was like, yeah, I guess you're right. But he ran away from real estate. He didn't want any part of it because all of his siblings were in it. My grandfather was in it. So he did something different, but he still had that entrepreneurial spirit. And it's funny because now he sits on a couple of boards of real estate development companies that build hospital systems. And so I was like, man, you're still in real estate. So that bug and that spirit has always been a part of me and a part of my family to really, be in control of your own destiny and walk your own path. I think, it's kind of, been a part of my mindset for a long time.
I love that. I love that. I mean, that describes how I feel about myself. It's about controlling your destiny, but then there's also the overlap of real estate. And so I feel like I'm going to have a lot to learn from you just throughout this conversation, because every entrepreneur's journey is unique, but there's those instances of making snap decisions that alter the course that you're on and change your history as an individual as you know it.
Yeah.
And so what I want to ask next is, as you're getting into commercial real estate, did you set out to target the affordable or low income housing market, or how did you start to make that transition? Because this is a really like socially and economically impactful section of the industry that doesn't get touched on too much, but you're one of those people who do.
My career progression has been one of ebbs and flows. It's been choppy. It's been challenges and stumbles and picking myself back up. It's been very unconventional, my path. So again, I started off at Freddie Mac, was there for 3 years. And then I remember, I think it was the last stint I did when I was in the DC office. There was a guy, that something is Jack Jacobson was his name. He was a sharp guy. He was working on a CFA, older gentleman in his 50s. And he was like, Chris, if you want to become really good at commercial real estate, you're going to have to get some experience in other asset classes besides multifamily. You're going to have to learn about, big box retail strip, office, all those things, and also study lease analysis. And it's like, you're not going to get that here. It's like, this is a good place to start. But you may have to go, and it was a great piece of advice. I thought he was crazy at the time, but then I was like, he's making sense. And so when I got to Chicago, there was an opportunity that opened up, at LaSalle Bank, in the capital markets group, where they did CMBS pools. They underwrote commercial real estate deals that went into CMBS pools. And I was like, oh, wow, this is pretty exciting. This is the investment banking side of real estate. And so I jumped at the chance and went there. And it was the boiler room. I had 30 to 60 loans at any given time on my desk between $1 to $5 million. Average deal size was about $2.26 million. We were knocking deals out. And that's where I really got good at evaluating deals quickly, being able to evaluate the cash flows, the expenses, and to know what the health of the property was at that particular time, what the risk factors were, to break those down. Because, when you're working for a bank, and when you're underwriting deals, your main objective is risk mitigation. Did you take all the risks into account for the money that you're going to be lending? Or do you need to lower the loan dollars? What are the parameters? All those things. So I got really good at that. And I thank that guy for making that suggestion. Unfortunately, 2008 rolled around and boom, and we all got knocked out of the game. And I was like, holy smokes, what is going on? Because I saw it was like a slow train wreck happening. In the midst of that, all of our customers went away. And I'm asking them, like, well, what's going to happen? Well, what happens? They're like, we can't sell our mortgages to anybody anymore. All the liquidity dried up. I'm like, what do you mean? I was like, so somebody's making money at this. I was like, what's going to happen to us? Like, well, we'll probably be out of here real soon. I'm like, I'm getting fired. I'm getting laid off. What do you think? And my American dream had just like popped, because this was the first time I had any experience with that. I had gone through all this transition. Prior to me going to college, I did 7 years in the Army. And so that experience, kind of prepared me for, the next chapter of going through school and going to corporate America. But I was not prepared to get laid off. And then not being able to find a job after that for a while was very troubling. And so I tucked tail, came back to Milwaukee, and I I had an aunt. She had worked for the Milwaukee public school system for almost 30 years. And she was like, Chris, because I couldn't find a job, she was like, why don't you come in and just substitute teach for a while? You're good at math. So I went and I started teaching algebra and advanced algebra. And during that time frame, I was on the ground. I was in the community, and I was seeing all these social things. I was referring kids to social services and all this kind of stuff. I was able to share my corporate knowledge in the math class and really make the connection of the stuff I'm teaching you to the next level. And so that kind of got me thinking about, wow, what's really going on here, in the urban community and the community that I grew up in. And from there, an opportunity to go work at WIDA came, the Wisconsin Housing Economic Development Authority. That's the state housing financial authority that issues low-income housing tax credits. And I was like, well, this is my opportunity to jump back in the market. And I jumped back in and I was like, wow, this is the affordable housing side of things. So that's kind of how I got into it. And it just opened things up. And I was only there for like a year and a month, but I got a huge wealth of knowledge and understanding, made a lot of great contacts. And that's what led me to become the deputy director of the Milwaukee office of the Local Initiative Support Corporation. That's where I really got a big wealth of knowledge on economic development, how philanthropic organizations provide capacity to community development organizations, commercial corridor development, and how cities, those nonprofit organizations, and banks, they all work together, and there's this whole ecosystem like works together. So that's kind of how I got into it, and it just opened a whole new world up for me. I was like, man, I should have did this a long time ago. So yeah.
So there's a lot of these organizations sort of orchestrating and working together to, encourage affordable housing development. And you've done a lot there, but it seems like there's still a massive shortage.
There is.
What's the cause of that?
There's a number of things. Funding is a big part of it, because that money has to come from somewhere. There's only so many dollars allocated to affordable housing from the federal government per, on an annual basis to each state. But then, there's only so many dollars that come out of the philanthropic organizations, and they have their own pet initiatives that they want to focus on that may not align with what's actually happening, on the ground. I think, what I saw too, in my tenure at LIHTC, I saw these organizations and these people that didn't live in these environments that wanted to talk down to the community and say, well, you need this and you need that, without actually asking them and really addressing the real needs. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, these organizations have been in our communities for over 30-something years and nothing's changed or very little has changed. Where's the disconnect? And so I think there needs to be more of an education that needs to happen and within the communities so that they know how to fix their own issues, with the assistance of those larger nonprofit organizations and philanthropic organizations. So instead of those organizations talking at them, they're speaking with them to create the solutions that can organically come out of that. And I think that's been a huge disconnect. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done with regard to that.
Yeah, I want to touch on both of those items. So what other things could be done in the community, and then the financing aspect? So there are the tax credits that are available. It just seems like they're not enough, though.
There's not enough. And what I fear, I'm not going into politics or anything, but this next administration, I don't know if they're going to be as amenable to that, or open to that that vein of financing. There's a lot of NIMBYism, not in my backyard. There are certain communities that don't want affordable housing in their communities because they believe, a certain element is going to come with that. And unfortunately, there's a stigma when it comes to the so-called welfare and affordable housing. And in certain areas, you can't even say affordable housing. You got to call it something else. They're terming all these other terms, next generation housing. They're calling it a whole bunch of other stuff. Even almost workforce housing is starting to get a bit of a stigma because they know it's people that are low income, that are working jobs that are minimum wage. But these communities, I want to be able to go to Culver's and get a burger. Well, who's working at Culver's? It's not just high school kids. There are adults in there, especially in some of these outlier communities that are working these jobs, taking care of their families. And they need housing. They can't be taking a bus or taking Uber out to these places. Even some of the manufacturing places that are way out in Delafield and, in other places, in the outskirts outside of the main urban area, these people need housing and they need good quality housing, not toxic housing. And that's one of the biggest issues that we're trying to address, with some of the initiatives, but it's not addressed enough. Let's just put it that way.
Mm-hmm. So, the socioeconomic gaps in neighborhoods exists anywhere in the world, but it's really prevalent in the U.S.
Big time.
From what I've heard on conversations, different parts of Europe, they'll actually integrate the low-income housing with the rest of the neighborhood so that you don't identify it. Then there's no stigma.
Right.
And it also prevents the formulation of essentially ghettos where you've put all of the low-income jobs or low-income housing. Mm-hmm. And that creates a trap, fundamentally.
Yeah, it does.
It separates those people from the rest of society. And that's really detrimental.
Yeah, I think there's a push by some developers, some of my contemporaries, guys like Anthony Casey, Kevin Newell, R.M. Cazzette, that graduated from the ACRE program here in Milwaukee. They're looking at, that lifestyle center type, where it's mixed income developments, to where that kind of dulls out and grays out that, that differentiation between incomes. But it also helps to foster, a growth. And I think it does something psychologically to those individuals that may be on the lower rung of the income spectrum that can see someone that's, doing a little bit better. They may want to aspire to, okay, well, man, I need to go and upgrade my education or get some skill sets to upgrade and do better. I think that there's an opportunity for that there. And, so I think there is room for more conscious planning and strategic planning in your development projects to really add that type of aspect to those projects, to be conscious of that.
Right. And in general, people have a complete misunderstanding, I would say, of really how people end up in low-income housing. It doesn't just mean that you were generationally poor. It could have been that you encountered healthcare bills and you couldn't afford it and you were downsizing, or you have a physical or mental disability, or
you got laid off and have been late. Like when I got laid off. Hey, I'm not ashamed to say it. I had to go to the food. I had to go to a soup kitchen and get a box of groceries at a particular time. And I was living in my mother's basement for 2.5 years because I couldn't get a job. And so rebounding from that and recognizing that, man, if I did 7 years in the Army, I got a degree in finance and investment banking, I have an MBA, and I can fall like this. Well, man, what could happen to what's going on with other people out here? So it totally changed my mindset about people that hit hard times. And I appreciated, what I had. I had a better appreciation for people trying to pull themselves up and needing help, needing real, genuine help. And so, and as a veteran, recognizing, that, people need help out here, and there's room for that.
Yeah, and with all the climate crisis that's been happening across the U.S.,
That's
I
a
mean,
whole
you had
ball of
what
wax.
was on the
Yeah.
East Coast, you got these floods, people's houses are devastated, their communities
Yeah.
are wiped. You've got
Yeah.
even on the West Coast where you have multi-million dollar houses, but these
Yeah.
neighborhoods are gone. And
Gone.
and what are those people going to do?
Exactly.
And
I
I
mean,
think
just
that's
in a blink of an eye,
right.
you could be on the street. And
Exactly.
like what am I going to do now? I think we all need to take stock of this moment right now, of that situation, of those people who some had generational wealth, a lot of millionaires, actors, and from all spectrums of life that you would consider affluent. Now they're out on the street. They got to totally rebuild their lives and rebuild their homes. Insurance companies, I think it's criminal. The insurance companies are back, and you pay all these premiums all these years, and then they're going to say we're not gonna insure you anymore. We're not gonna. Well, what about all these years that you were getting all this money, and you're just gonna walk away? I think that's unpatriotic. It's un-American. I think it needs to be investigated by Congress, and hopefully they do something about that, because there's no way they should be abandoning people when they've been paying premiums all those years.
Yeah, and I always say that in addition to the ethical argument, just from a societal structure, you
Right.
want to take care of everyone, no matter
Take
where
care of
they
people.
are. Because if things become completely destabilized, that's how you get
Mad
the
Max.
right. and the outlandish or even sometimes violent
Yep.
response, right?
And
If
our-
we look at what happened to the United Healthcare CEO, that was a person who went
Yeah.
through the healthcare system and said, well, this is completely corrupt and used against me. I don't care what happens next.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
can't have that at scale.
We can't have that.
And when you take
Right.
away people's shelter or when they don't have access to education or opportunity, if you create hopeless people with nothing to lose, then they will
That's when
take
you have a
action.
problem. And that's where, this whole thing, that's a great point, man. When you create the environment where there's hopelessness, and that's what you see in a lot in urban areas amongst young black men who've been disenfranchised, and young black and brown men who've been disenfranchised from a system that you say, okay, well, you pull yourself up by your bootstraps and you can live the American dream if you just, do this and do that and get your education and all this. But then there are all these impediments, and when they get there, you keep raising the bar, or they're completely shut out in general, because of, socioeconomic, things. They may not be able to afford college, or their high school system, the education system was horrible. So, they're totally shut out of a system. They may have one little scratch on their record. When they were a kid, they did something stupid and got a felony. So now you're telling me that they don't have a chance to turn their lives around and come back from that? That is dangerous. That you're creating a whole class of people that's just trying to throw away and get ready for prison. Is that the kind of society that we want? Hell no. No, we got to do something different. And I think it's up to our generation to really start changing that narrative, because this older generation, they did it wrong. I honestly think that they did it wrong, and it's up to us to start changing that narrative, saying, no, you deserve a second chance. You deserve to be a part of society and to have an opportunity to be able to build yourself up.
So in addition to providing the low-income housing, what other community resources could be provided that would help people in those circumstances?
I think a combination of education is the big one. I'm a huge proponent of education. I'm a kid from the north side of Milwaukee, 20th and Locust, where I grew up at, 5 through 206, highest per capita black male incarceration rate in the country. And I made it out. And I know a bunch of guys that made it out, including our county executive, David Crowley, and the mayor, Cavalier Johnson, both from 5 through 206. So I'm a huge proponent of education. And I think that we need to have more unconventional educational routes, certificate programs. Everybody is not going to be able to go to college. Everybody isn't supposed to go to college. I believe we need to create better pathways to trades, to other educational things such as personal finance, understanding your credit, understanding just how to manage money, all those kinds of things. I think that stuff is really important. And even when I was teaching on Fridays, I would have locker room sessions on, let's talk about how do you go buy a house or how do you go buy a car. What is an interest rate? All those kinds of things. And giving them those life skill sets to be able to utilize and apply in their own lives. So, but that's just one aspect. There's a bunch of different things that need to be done systemically, I think. Reforming the criminal justice system. That's a whole nother ball of wax. So, and they've taken steps to do that. But I think more needs to be done, with regard to that as well. So, but yeah.
So if we look at the housing situation, it's a good place to start in resolving this. We can talk about education, criminal justice, government leadership. That's a huge component. Yeah. I would say you're a very prominent leader actually throughout southeastern Wisconsin on these topics, but also encouraging people to take responsibility and accountability just because of your own story, right? Yeah. Overcoming trials and tribulations and still being successful. Yeah. But honing in on the housing. So we mentioned that overall the development efforts are not meeting expectations, in part because there's a shortage of it, but then also the developments themselves are not always realized to the best of their capabilities. To the highest standards.
There's a number of issues there. I think there's a disconnect between developers, I think the municipalities and what's happening on the ground. I think, one of the biggest impediments is construction costs are super high. Construction costs, labor costs, shortage of good labor. I just was going to respond to an RFP, and I did a feasibility analysis on building student housing around Marquette. I had a $2.5 million gap because the construction costs are so high. And I was like, there's no way we're going to be able to fill this. So, and I think, there is a cascade of issues that have led us here. High fuel costs, again, labor costs, good skilled labor availability, and just, those things, as well as, what else? I mean, the disconnect between, municipalities and and the actual needs on the ground, and community organizations. So I think there is a big gap in a bunch of these areas that need to be met, to where, they look like small chunks individually, and small issues, but when you put them all together in totality, it's a huge problem. But the biggest thing right now, I think construction costs are high. Interest rates are a little bit high, but historically, I remember my grandfather used to tell me, interest rates are 13, 14%. That was back in the 70s. Now, when people got, I guess, spoiled with the 2.5% and 3.5% rates when they were here, and now they doubled. And so people are freaking out, hair on fire. My deal's not going to work. And I'm like, well, you just got to adapt to it. I mean, we just have to adapt. And I think not many people are willing to adapt to the market. They have to.
Very good advice.
Yeah.
When you say the gap between the municipalities and what's happening on the ground, is it just the financial needs that aren't being met, or is it also zoning and other factors?
It's not just financial. I think just from there's a gap between the city and what their mission is and what they want versus what the needs are of the people. And even with the city legislatures, they're not. Yeah, I'm speaking about Milwaukee. There seems to be a disconnect in the Common Council and its constituency and the needs of the constituency. They haven't been working on behalf of we the people for a while. There's all this paper mache stuff. These symbols. We put up this sign here, or we name this thing over here, or we're showing up we having this gala for that. That stuff doesn't matter, man. The needs of the people are not being met. And that's why we have so much, again, there's hopelessness in the community with regard to lack of jobs and all these other things. And so from a real estate perspective, Milwaukee is a place, it's a city of lots and a city of toxic housing. You know about the lead lateral situation. We need to get that taken care of. That directly affects the health of the population.
For people who aren't familiar, could you elaborate?
Yeah. So in Milwaukee, the water supplies that come from the city into the homes, those are made with lead pipes, and the lead levels in children were through at an all-time high. If you take blood tests, and if you know anything about lead and the effect on the body, it affects the mental capacity. It affects a bunch of different health, cognitive functions in the body, and you can see it. I didn't realize it, but when I was at NPS, I could see the effects of some of this stuff on the children, and I thought about myself and how, I grew up in the inner city, and we had the same lead laterals, and I had a hard time taking tests. I was like, I know I'm not dumb. I know I'm not, I don't lack intelligence, but there was a fog there. And I think, lead had a lot to do with it. And so that's a big problem in a lot of urban cities where they got these lead pipes that are going to these homes, and they need to be switched out. There needs to be a huge infrastructure bill that just addresses that. And they've been doing some of it, but, they need to do it on a really grand scale, here in Milwaukee because it affects so many inner city kids, negatively. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you have a good point about the virtue signaling as opposed to infrastructure repairment. And this is something that when I was traveling abroad, other countries don't play around with, especially in Asia. It's not about the message. It's just, can we improve the bottom line of our population and make everyone better off? And you don't see that. There's a lot of capitalization from the gap and a lot of corruption in the system, and we have dilapidated infrastructure, and it's starting to get to a point where we need people to step up and take action and turn this around before the U.S. crumbles in on itself. I mean, even in more established states, what was it, 2 years ago now, the snowstorm in Texas, and their grid was compromised, and millions of people without energy. You would think we would have that under control right now, or at least have faster solutions to deploy in the case of crisis.
Right.
And we don't.
I think that's the biggest thing. The infrastructure issue is huge, and they want to start building all these AI centers. They want to electrify all the cars. We don't have the grid system for that. That needs to be addressed first. Let's get our electrical grid up to par to be able to maintain and sustain that, what they want to build. I just saw that the next administration has this, $100 billion initiative to build all these AI centers. Okay, will the electrical grid support all that stuff? What are they going to do? So hopefully that's a follow-on to that. So we'll see.
Yeah, I was having a conversation in another episode about that and how compute is directly related to the amount of energy available to us. Yeah. And there's been some revisit to the nuclear conversation. I think that would be great. I think technology has advanced enough where we don't have to think about the meltdowns that happened 40 years ago or 50 years ago. Yeah. And just, that would be empowering to a lot of people, and it makes cities cleaner and makes cities more efficient. And then we could realize, some of those artificial intelligence opportunities But
Sure.
even if we look at infrastructure at large, we're talking about how communities need housing, they need education, and they need jobs.
Yes.
We really should be deploying people en masse in industries like real estate and construction to start building in their neighborhoods, because that's
Yeah.
employment, it's education, it's skills, and then it's making those neighborhoods better. It
Yes.
seems to me like perhaps that's a no-brainer. Like, why are we not doing that?
Has to be the political will. Immediacy. You know, what's in my face right now versus we can keep kicking the can down the road until we can. You know, there seems to be that mentality of well, let's just worry about that tomorrow. Well, no, because eventually it's going to rear its ugly head and bite you.
Right.
And when that happens, and it's going to be like, well, then the point fingers and the blame game. Well, you should have did this and you should have did. Well, now's the time. Let's focus on now and get it done. And but I think also, you know, the citizenry, we the people, need to stand up and start demanding this of our political leaders. And we're not demanding enough. We're too focused on identity crap and all this other stuff, not focused on the real issues of the day that are here with us, that are crumbling right now before our very eyes. And they're going to be super big problems, you know, a little bit not too far down the road. So we need to, you know, our bridges, our roads, electrical grid, our education system, all those things. There's so much stuff that needs to be fixed. And I think sometimes they may get overwhelmed themselves, the politicians, and say, well, what do we deal with first? And I think, you know, that's a big issue with it too.
Yeah, and you're starting to see some of that, at least 10% of the finger pointing and the concern in Milwaukee, even, where there's been an influx of luxury developments more than the city can actually fill. And so you're seeing higher vacancies than expected. Now, these luxury developments are really easy to underwrite because the rents are high. And so it checks out. And as long as you plan on that 95% occupancy, but that's not being hit. And so now these projects are in trouble. And people are saying, well, shouldn't it have been obvious? No one can afford these $2,500 a month rents.
I'm trying to figure out who are these people living in these places? Where do they work at? Are there that many really good high paying jobs like that here? Yeah, we got some decent industry. We got Northwestern Mutual and, you know, some of the breweries and we got some law firms here and stuff like that. But for the most part, the amount of luxury units that they have on deck versus the population, they're overshooting. And I know personally, you know, of certain developers that are hurting right now, and property owners that own some Class A stuff, both in multifamily and in office. They're hurting. That luxury Class A apartment sector. Yeah. They overshot their skis.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And in large part, I can understand that cities want those types of developments. It makes the skyline more attractive. And then maybe you get an article that says Milwaukee is the most beautiful skyline. But you have to realize that Milwaukee is not Chicago. It's not New York City.
Yeah.
And you have to look at the income and the needs of the population. And there was just a total disconnect in the past few years, especially, when COVID money was, you know, drove down the cost of capital. Now that's reversed, and that's how a lot of these developers are getting stuck, where they were building for cheap, and then they didn't meet expectations, and now costs are up, and they're in trouble.
Yeah, that's why you know, on the front end, you have to be. The way I underwrite very conservatively. I go for the top number as opposed to that, you know, trying to squeeze a deal in, because you'll get clipped if you underwrite it wrong. So I'm very conservative when I do feasibility analysis on deals, and if it says, you know, if the deal is at 120, you know, or 120 cover, you know, I'm going to size it at 125 to see what it's looking like. You know, the rents, I'm not going to do the top rents. I'm going to do the mid-range rents, you know, average rents, in the area, as opposed to the top rents. So, because again, if you overshoot, you kill yourself. And think that, yeah, it's not going to be pretty. So, yeah.
So to segue a little bit, we've been talking about the low income. How does affordable housing and low income housing compare to market rate rents in those types of developments that aren't luxury? They don't need to be heavily subsidized, but they sit in the middle. How are those performing, and could we see more of that in the future?
The performance of market rate multifamily depends on. Yeah, I think it depends on which municipalities you're in. Places like Madison, they're getting killer rents. They're getting the top. You know, they got major industries there. The seat of the state government is there. They got Epic Systems, the University of Wisconsin. They're continuously building. So I heard some students are paying, you know, $1,200-$1,300 a month for a bedroom. That's just for a bedroom. That's not a complete unit. So in markets like those, they're commanding, you know, rents because they have a captive market. But then, you know, a place like Milwaukee, you know, the average rents for, you know, it varies, you know, based on the part of the city, you know, the submarket. I think, again, with a, you know, for a one bedroom, I don't know, like $950 to $1,100, and then, you know, for two bedrooms, that could shoot up to $1,300 to $1,400 for two bedrooms. That's about average. Now, in comparison to an affordable housing property, you know, they're a little bit lower and rents, and you know, they may have a Section 8 voucher. Then there's going to be a premium on top of that rent. But the tenant is only paying certain amount, and then the Section 8 piece is going to kick in over. So a landlord that has his properties are qualified for Section 8, he's charging his tenant maybe $800, and then rent assistance is going to kick in another $700 on top of that. That's how that goes. So and I was like, wow, I need to get some Section 8 properties. To get that top market price. So, yeah, so that's kind of where it is. People are still having a rough time finding decent affordable housing. You know, some of the quality, you know, for Class B, that, you know, apartments, you're getting, you know, those top rents, because there's such a shortage of housing, good quality housing in that medium range for the workforce. We're not talking about the luxury housing. Luxury housing, those people that are working at Kohl's and McDonald's and all those other places, or factory jobs that are making, you know, $15 an hour. They can't afford that luxury stuff downtown. They're looking for, you know, housing. That's why, you know, there's a huge push by some of the housing agencies to get them prepared, you know, get their credit straight and all that kind of stuff to get them on the road to home ownership with, you know, through affordable housing that way. And maybe buy a duplex to where they can, you know, have their unit and then rent out the other unit, make some income, and start, you know, building from there. So, but yeah, there's still a shortage of housing out there and a huge need for more housing.
Mm-hmm. Well, as we start to approach the end here, I want to be able to pick your brain and get some advice from you in certain topics. So one of the things that you described yourself as is an expert in project management. And everyone knows that the success of a project is how well you predict and coordinate and execute as you go through that. And you mentioned just a couple of minutes ago that you always underwrite super conservatively. Yeah. And this helps everything stay, you know, within budget. There's no surprises as the project comes along. What other pieces of advice do you have on the project management side of things for folks in real estate to succeed?
Definitely make sure your communication skills, both written and oral, are squared away, because this is a communication business. You got to know how to be able to deal with people, know how to deal with adversity, and how to properly address challenges that you may face throughout a project. You're also somewhat of a, you know, as a developer, and you're somewhat of a politician too, because you got to interface with the public entities, with your local politicians, with the community. Know how to deal with the community if you have a project that might not be popular in a certain area. Well, how are you going to address that? Especially when it comes to affordable housing in places like, certain communities outside of Milwaukee. I'm not going to name names because I don't want to get smacked around. but certain communities don't want affordable housing, and they have the NIMBYism. So how are you going to address this, and how are you going to characterize your property, or to address the affordability needs, but yet still keep the deal with the sentiment of the community, and address their needs as well. And so you have to be diplomatic, you have to be a politician, and be able to communicate with the team that you're dealing with throughout the process of the development project.
And for the real estate developers who might be thinking about getting into affordable housing but recognize that it can be an uphill battle, where should they start, and what advice do you have for them?
I would tell them to look at their state QAPs, the Qualified Action Plans, have a meeting with their state housing finance agency that issues those tax credits, and go to the informational meetings. Education. Learn as much as you can about Title 26 and the well, actually it's Section 42 of Title 26. That's what governs the low income housing tax credit program. Learn that. Talk to other developers. Of course, it's very competitive, so some developers may not even want to talk to you. You got to have capital. You got to at least have $1 million on deck. Just for pre-development, it costs between $250,000 to $300,000 to get a deal going, with everything that you have to do. And that includes your internal labor costs, architects, the appraisal, property condition reports, all those things. So it's a highly capital intensive part of the business. And a lot of people don't realize how capital intensive it is. Plus, the knowledge gap. It's a huge, steep learning curve, to understand the process, understand how your particular HFA works and the laws within, the state and federally, work. So there's a bunch of different things that have to be, covered. You better get you a good attorney that understands the tax credit side of the business. This is very different from the conventional side of commercial real estate. Affordable housing, and is its own beast and has its own DNA. So you got to learn that, especially when it comes to tax exempt bond financing. And then on the equity side, if the capital stack, building out your capital stack. What are the sources of dollars that I need to tap into to fill my gap? Because you're going to have a gap. Know and recognize that affordable housing development, you may cost $250,000 to $400,000 per unit. So the costs are very high, depending on, especially when it comes to putting in ADA requirements, for, American with Disabilities Act. If it's, needs-based housing or targeted affordable housing, if it's senior housing, each one of these are going to have an aspect to it that are going to require certain things and require some real headbanging on your part to get up to speed on. So education.
Awesome. And then one more question of that sort, just entrepreneurship in general. What's been something that was a tip or trick that you think helped you succeed? Like if you're looking back and you thought, well, gee, if I never learned this, I would be 10 paces back. What was something that really helped you get ahead that perhaps even most people aren't deploying already? Yeah.
Learn your industry of where you're at by going to conferences and networking.
Conferences and networking.
Conferences and networking is huge, because that's where you learn about, the changes and the the newest things that are going on in, in your particular industry. Learn who's in your industry. It doesn't have to be adversarial. A bunch of my friends are entrepreneurial developers, and we compare notes all the time. We talk all the time. And get to know, who's in your industry and who the leaders are in your industry. Get to understand, how, if you hit a roadblock, how do you, who to go to. Find a mentor if you need to. Someone that's done it for 20 years and that's had success. Read books, get up to speed on the books, educate yourself continuously, be a continuous learner in your industry, and educate yourself always be educating.
Awesome. And there's so many different ways to educate it. It's talking to those people. It's mentorship. It could be YouTube videos, college courses.
YouTube videos is great. YouTube University has been great for me. Yeah. So, yeah. Talk to guys like you, Matt.
Yeah, right. And for people who have the entrepreneurial spirit, knowing that they can go online and they can find that information and there's no college debt required to source that. And with AI,
go to Udemy.com too. Udemy.com is a great place.
You2Me?
It's called Udemy. Let me see what this is.
As long as you find that and send it to me afterwards, I can drop it in the show notes for everyone.
I'll do that. Yeah.
Which is where I want to start to wrap this up. Chris,
sure.
What's 2025 going to look like for you, and how can people get in touch with you?
2025 is right now in this first quarter. I'm priming the pump. I'm talking to municipalities for their development outlook. I'm talking to individuals that want to grow into this space. I'm also looking at conferences I'm going to be attending throughout the year. So just looking to expand and to bring on more business and collaborate with other developers, that want to collaborate as well. I'm big on collaboration because you can't do this by yourself. And so I'd like to take my expertise and enhance whatever project, someone may have out there. They may need some help with financial analysis or interfacing with clients or dealing with municipalities or nonprofits. I have a wide background and breadth of experience in those aspects. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, absolutely. And for someone who wants to learn, they should reach out to you or they should explore what you're working on. Does your website, do you have a website for H. Benton Group?
Don't have a website yet. I'm working on the website. I'm having some connection issues. It's finished, but it hasn't been uploaded yet. But they can reach me on LinkedIn.
And you do have a Calendly. I saw that.
I do have a Calendly.
Okay.
Yep. I do have that. And I can share all that stuff with you later on. But you can share that with the folks. I have a blank card and all that kind of stuff. I'll be getting my website up really soon though. But I want to leave this with entrepreneurs. This last message. There's an old proverb that states, allow your gifts to make room for you where you will be able to expand your territory and it'll place you in the presence of important people. And if you have that mindset, allow your gifts to make room for you. It will make room for you. And keep fighting the good fight out there.
Awesome. I love it. I mean, this has been a phenomenal episode, really unique in its content and a real call to action for people who want to perhaps be in real estate but have societal impact, knowing that there are portions of this industry that need work, that have opportunities, and that there are people like you out there who will help people. They don't have to go in this alone. We know that.
I want to help people. I love helping people in this space, business aspects, real estate aspects, especially a small business entrepreneur. I'm always willing to help out. So please reach out. Should I give my phone number? Should I put my phone number?
Let people book on your Calendly and then you can hand out the phone number.
Book me through Calendly,
Perfect.
All right, guys.
Well, Christopher, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, man, I wish you great success, man. And I'm really proud of you, man. You're really moving in great direction. So, and thank you for having me on. I appreciate you.
Appreciate that, sir. Alrighty.
All right, man.
Take care.
Peace and blessings.